Hey y'all, and welcome back to Joey's Booked. Today we are going to be talking about my top 10 of 2024. So today we are going to be looking at all of my favorite books from 2024. I have had some awesome reads this month, and it was really hard to compile everything down into a top 10 and especially pick a best book of the year. With that said, not every book, looking back and reflecting, that made it into my top 10 was necessarily a 5-star book. And not every 5-star book I had necessarily made it into my top 10. But I just had some really great reads this year. There's been two things that have really made a good book for me in 24. It's either I was just really vibing with the feel of the book, or I was really enjoying the commentary and it hit me in some way, even if it wasn't the best written book. Either of those things, it just kind of depended on where my mental space was throughout the year. I do have a few honorable mentions I want to bring up. I'm not going to go into full detail on every single book. I might just talk about it a little bit, especially in the honorable mentions. And then we will go from my number 10 all the way up to my number 1 top spot for the year. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking. Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. I loved the commentary in this book and just how it talked about so many different aspects of queerness in general and queer representation in media. It was kind of ridiculous though. As far as the plot went, it wasn't the best thing I ever read, but for the commentary alone, this was such a delight that I didn't think I would love near as much as I did. Not necessarily the best written book or anything that I've read this year. This is an author that I know personally, and while it wasn't the best written thing, it just hit me in a different way. And that's going to be Out of the Pickle Jar by Stephanie Plumlee. I used to work with Stephanie years ago, and I didn't know her super well or anything. She taught at a school I used to work at before we both eventually left that school, and she released a memoir that she independently published, and it's not something making huge waves or anything like that on the internet. And while it wasn't 100% the best written thing for me, just hearing her story hit me in a way, and it was just a really good reminder, especially for me as an educator, on why I chose that path in life. And it was just a really good read in general. And I would maybe recommend it out, especially if you work in either education or you just want to read about another person's experiences with some of their traumas in life. We've got Somewhere Beyond the Sea by T.J. Klune, sequel to The House in the Cerulean Sea. I talked about this in my December wrap-up, if you want to check that out. Another 5-star from the very end of the year would be Oona Out of Order. Just really well-written book on time travel. I also read this in December. We had quite a few in December that hit really hard and made it really close on this list. From a bit earlier in the year, we have Natural Beauty by Ling Huang, which is a beauty horror that I really enjoyed. There were some things in here that didn't work perfectly for me, but I really liked the commentary, especially on race and just the beauty industry as a whole, and really enjoyed this one. In November, I read The Night Guest by Hildur Knútsdóttir. This is translated from Icelandic. It was just wild and weird and such a good time on the vibes. It's a really quick short horror novella that I am so happy I enjoyed as much as I did. We also have They Can Never Leave This Place by LaRocca. He was very, very close to making it into my top 10, but thinking back, this is short stories, even though they're kind of interconnected thematically. The reason this is so close is because of the first story, All That Remains in You to Keep, I think is what it was called. And just remember, it was from the perspective of a beetle who's falling in love with the dead body that they're residing in, and that is weird and unhinged, and I loved it so much. And I think about it constantly. I don't really think that much about all of the other stories in here, even though there's lots on nature and stuff. And my last honorable mention is actually 2 books, and that's the Legends and Lattes series. So we have both Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bonedust. Both of these I have discovered a love with cozy fantasy if it is done right between this and the T.J. Klune. But this is much lower stakes for the most part, and we follow Viv as she opens a coffee shop in the first book, and the second one is more of a prequel to her story and how she got there. Love them both. These are great for people who are book lovers or coffee lovers, and you just want something that's kind of like a warm hug. With all of that said, let's get into my actual favorites of the year. In our number 10 spot, we have The Center by Ayesha, Manazir, Siddiqi. And I really questioned if this was going to even make my top 10 or not, because I loved it. It was a backlist from, I think, last year that hit really big. But I remember seeing there was some questioning commentary on it, because this is a Muslim author, and I remember talking about representation in this, and like New Age ideologies versus what's accepted in the culture, and I still haven't really gotten answers on it. I kind of moved on. I just love this story. It was wild. It was weird. It wasn't like the most shocking thing I ever read or anything, but I really liked how it talked about language, and there was just something about it that worked for me. And I just think really fondly back on reading it, and I would love to kind of jump back into this at some point. And I really look forward to anything else from this author, if anything else comes back. In my number 9 spot, this is the one book I don't have physically right now. It was a library pull, and it was only a novella, so sometimes I have to really convince myself to fully finally purchase a novella anymore, unless I find a really good deal on it. But that would be Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. And this year I read 2 books by Delilah S. Dawson, which were both from the library, because I also read Guillotine. And I did check out It Will Only Hurt for a Moment, but I never got around to it because it was longer than I anticipated. But I do want to read that in the future. Bloom just hit different. I love an obsession story. I love anything queer, and I love anything that just kind of goes off the rails in the best way possible. And that's what Bloom was. It starts with these 2 women who meet at a farmer's market. They start to get romantically involved, and it just kind of goes from there. And was it the most surprising twist or anything? Not necessarily, but I think I was so invested in just the weird stuff that was going on from the relationship standpoint that I just wasn't even thinking about some of the other stuff that could be going on, and was like probably not that hard to guess. I just loved it. I thought it was great. It was a fun, quick time, and I really want to reread it soon. In the 8th spot, we have a classic. Well, a modern classic. And that's going to be The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. It's another novella. I really am loving some of these horror novellas and short, weird novellas. In this, we are following our main character, Joanna, who is like a housewife. She's moving in with her husband to a new community, and then she starts noticing some weird stuff with the housewives in the community, because she's like really progressive and like big on women's rights and things like that. She starts noticing that, like, other than like maybe these 2 friends she's made, that all the women are just very homebodies and very traditional, and she's trying to figure out what's going on in this community as more things continue to happen. It's so good. It's so well done, and it's influenced so many things. I don't know what it is about like a suburban HOA horror and why I'm loving those so much, but I don't know. That has become something I'm realizing I really, really enjoy, and I have zero reasoning for it. I loved this. I can see how this inspired other novellas like Comfort Me with Apples, which I loved, I think, last year when I read. I don't know. Something about suburban horror, though. I have a couple on my radar, and I just picked up one the other day, so 2025, this may become a bigger genre for me, or subgenre. The most surprising book on this list was only a 4.5. I think this, Bloom, and The Center were all 4.5s. But the most surprising book of the year for me, How to Become the Dark Lord, or Die Trying by Django Wexler. And I have not stopped thinking about this book for some reason since I read it. Right around the time my camera died, I think I was filming this vlog, and it never got finished, where I was gonna do a cozy kind of reading vlog, or what I thought was going to be cozy. Because there was this in 2 other books, and I just never got to do it. And this was my favorite book out of those, because I still read them. Well, I DNF'd one of them. This one I thought was my least likely to enjoy, and it became one of my favorite things I've read this year. In this, we are following Davi, who at some point has woken up in this like fantasy world. She is, every time she wakes up, she's in like this time loop, and she's told she's the chosen one, and she is the one destined to defeat the Dark Lord and change the kingdom. But every time she dies, it can go, she could die in a few seconds, she could die years and years later. For over 100 tries, she has been stuck in this time loop, which is like centuries to her, and she's just fed up with it. So she decides to become the Dark Lord herself and maybe end this cycle of suffering and failing. And she is just this unique character that, is it a poorly written woman? Oh, most definitely. Is it intentional, though, that she is as crazy and weird and poorly probably written as she is? Yes, it is meant to be that way. It isn't meant to be, like, super serious. But throughout this, I wasn't expecting to be getting these footnotes, which are like these random thoughts Davi is having, and these weird pop culture references that you wouldn't think would work, but as you read through the story, like there's more and more of a reason that's being hinted at as to why she even knows what any of these things are. And they're very confused because it's been so long now since she's been in any semblance of our type of world, but it's hinted at that she originally came from it. And I don't know, it was just ridiculous. It is going to be a duology, and the next one comes out, I believe, it's either in March or May. I think it's March. And I cannot wait to finish this out. This is hilarious. I laughed the whole time. I flew through this in probably a day or two, and it was like almost 400 pages. I love this. If you want just something funny and unexpected, that's who I would recommend. And then in our next spot is our last 4.5 star, which looking back, I'm thinking of, it's one of those books I wanted to give a 5 so bad, but there was just reasons I couldn't. But that's The Har by David Sodergren, and this has been making waves on Book Talk since I read it. I read this because of the 24-hour horathon with Ashley's Little Library, and I loved it. And since then, I know Gabby Reads has really been recommending it out a lot. There's been a lot of other content creators and stuff that I've seen reading. There's some that have gone and done like full David Sodergren reading blogs. I haven't picked up any more of his books yet, even though I really want to. I have like several on my wish list. In this, we are following Mariel, who is kind of like the last person on this little village in Scotland, and she's like one of the last few people. She's an older woman, her husband's gone, and there is this big conglomerate kind of trying to come through and take the land and build on it, and she refuses to buy out. A lot of other people have. There's a few others kind of holding on, but she just refuses, and she's walking down the street one day or something, and she comes across this har comes in, this fog, and she comes upon this weird creature or whatever, and it kind of goes from there. And it did not take the way that I thought it was going to. It is gruesome, it is bloody, it is heartfelt and full of grief, and Mariel is probably one of my favorite characters I've followed in a long time, in just the journey that she ends up on. And there's some hard stuff to read that's not even like necessarily gore and blood. There's like elder abuse, there's just so much that happens in this short book, and I love it so much. It's another one I really want to reread, but I need to get a hold of more David Sodergren soon. So for number 5, originally these were 2 separate books on this list, and the more I thought about it, the more I really kind of look at these 2 as things I read not really at the same time, but that have similar thematic things to a degree, even though they are very different. And that's going to be both Chlorine by Jade Song and The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. Both of these are books I think so fondly of looking back on. I read Chlorine earlier in the year, so it's been a lot longer since I've read it. I still really love it, and I considered back and forth on which of these to put over the other, because they both have questionably queer stuff going on. They both talk about growing up as Asian American in the US and like different cultural things, and they both have some really good horror elements to them. In Chlorine, we are following Rin, and Rin is a swimmer, high school swimmer, competitive swimmer, and she's obsessed with mermaids, and she wants to become one. And we're just kind of following her journey up until it takes this really dark, twisted kind of thing. The body horror in this one is great. I love the commentary on just growing up Asian American and the pressures and stuff that are on you. And it was really good. I really, really enjoyed this one. The same as with The Eyes Are the Best Part. And this one was a little bit more my direction as far as the concept. I don't think it hit as well on the gore and the horror itself, but it was still really good. Still very visual. Jayan is also Asian American, I believe. I want to say in Chlorine she's Chinese American, and then I want to say Eyes Are the Best Part was maybe Korean American. Anyways, they're both Asian American. And in this one, Jayan is, her mom, or her dad has left her and her sister with her mom, and the mom has like a new boyfriend in her life who Jayan really doesn't like. It's a white man who really like fetishizes Asian women and is just really distasteful. But then there's also this thing where like her mom in the beginning is talking to them about like they're eating fish or something, and is trying to kind of get her to eat the eyeballs of the fish, because in her culture that is like a way to bring good luck. As these things are going on, Jayan has started to develop this taste for eyeballs, and it goes from there. It's really weird, really creepy. It kind of starts off a little slow in the beginning because there's like other relationships and things going on, but it's still just a really good time. In the number 4th spot is one of the last books I read in 2024, and that's going to be We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver. We Used to Live Here. This is in my December wrap-up where I can talk about it a lot more if you want to go check that out. This was a really unexpected one. I thought I was going to DNF it at the very beginning because it was so slow and I hate it. Eve, I disliked so much in the beginning, but as the story goes on, it gets really weird. It's about this family that have come up to where Eve and her partner live, and is like, hey, we used to live in this house. I'd love to show my family around, kind of introduce them, and then they like refuse to leave. But then it starts getting like really like House of Leaves and just really weird and twisty, and I could not move past all of the weird coded messaging and stuff in the books once I realized that was going on, and then going back and seeing like the whole subreddit rabbit holes and things like that of like people trying to like figure out and piece together all these messages I didn't catch in the book, and what about this and what about that, and it's weird. It's got some supernatural stuff to it, but it is such a good time. I just say make sure you are in the mind space for something you really have to think about. My top 3 change constantly out of this list of what was my best book of the year, but they had to go somewhere. So at number 3, I'm going to have to put The Watchers by A.M. Shine. I was obsessed with this when I read it. I thought it was not going to be the greatest thing because I feel like more people dislike this than like it. But I remember watching Jordaline Reads and how much she gushed about this. I just had to finally give it a try. And God, I am so happy I did. I got it because I knew it was that it was being made into a movie. So I really wanted to read it, and I got it from the library because even though this has the stupid major motion picture thing on it, it took me so long to find a cover that didn't have the dumb movie cover on it, and I wanted the white one so bad. I have also since read the new sequel, Stand the Light, but there was just something about the atmosphere of this book I loved. I loved the like locked roomness almost of like these people that are like trapped in a forest, where there's these questionable things going on outside of like this cabin they're stuck in. The characters were interesting and there was development and stuff through each of them. Even though I like some of them more than others, but there was just the twist in it. I don't know what I thought this book was going to be about, but it wasn't what it is about, and I love what it is way more than where I thought it was going. It was just different than what I expected. I highly say go in blind and just let it happen. Is it the most amazingly written thing? Probably not. Did it just work for me? Completely, yes. It's very much one of those vibe kind of books. Another book that just vibed so well for me this year originally was actually being beaten out by Chlorine as a favorite of the year about mid-year. And then I just think about this constantly. I never thought I was going to even enjoy this book, and I'm so happy I picked it up because at number 2 is going to have to be Mayfly by C.J. Lead. And in this, we are following Maeve, who is essentially a princess at a specific theme park, and she has some weird tastes in mind. And it's kind of following her and just this really unhinged stuff. And then she meets this guy who also has like some dark stuff going on, and it's almost like serial killer-y, not quite. But they've both got some trauma and they've got some stuff going on. It is dark, it is gruesome, there are trigger warnings galore in this. They do some very questionable things. I loved it way more than I ever thought I could have, and I am so happy it is towards the top of the list this year. And the final number 1 book of 2024 for me is a really unexpected, unconventional book that I read in November, and that is going to be Coup de Grace by Sophia Ajram. This book is actually currently on its way in the mail to me here soon because I found a copy on Pango that's like, I think it's either signed or it has a signed book plate or something. That was on a really good deal, and I just couldn't say no when I saw it. It is another horror novella that, if you would have asked me going into it, I thought it would have been like a 3-star. When I started reading it, it hit me in a weird emotional level. It hits me even thinking about it. But basically, we are following our main character who is on a subway. He gets off and he gets trapped in like this liminal space in a subway system where it's just like ever going on and changing and there's no way out. And it's him coping with how he's feeling mentally. What it is he is a queer character who is essentially on their way to end things. It's very just emotional for me to read, especially for it being such a horror book. And that's not to say that the horror is not in there. There's some weird stuff that goes on that is almost cosmic level. There is a weird ending that I loved so much, and not being able to film at the time that I read this book, I really wanted to. There's a very twist ending kind of thing that is very experimental. And a lot of people have been like, well, yeah, the experimental thing's kind of cool, but I thought it could have been done better. But I don't think a lot of people are talking about why it was done. What that has to do with the thought processes and the choices of being in a position where you don't want to continue on with your life. Found a way to explore those possibilities in just a very unique way, and there was some real dark humor in the book. There was a lot of underlinings too, and it just, I don't know, it hit me. I feel emotional talking about it, which it's very rare for a book just to make me really emotional, but this book had me the whole time, and I am so happy to have read it. Really would love to see more reviewers that are just kind of feeling meh on it, to really look at why some of these conversations are being described in the way they are in this book. It was very just an emotional read for me that made me feel seen in a way not many books have, and probably on the deepest level a book has. And I didn't even think it was going to be in this top spot, but the more I think about this book, the more it kind of hits me. And it was just a random library pull too. I just saw some other people review it and thought, oh yeah, that's a weird idea. One of the best impactful things, triggering things I have read in a long time. And I'm really happy I read it at the point that I did, because I was in the mental space to appreciate it for what it was. And I would highly recommend that. And with that, that is the end of my top 10 of 2024. Hopefully you have made it this far into the video and enjoyed. If you have, please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure to let me know down below what was your favorite read of 2024. Thank you again, as always, for watching and just continuing to come by and listen to me ramble for who knows how long about things I like to read. I cannot wait for 2025 and to hopefully be getting some fun video ideas I've got out there, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Thanks again. Bye.